Today is Mental Health Awareness Month. We talked about that earlier. It is a topic we're going to revisit throughout the next 4 weeks right here on Start Your Day. This morning, we wanted to focus on our history and the impact it can have on our everyday lives. So here to talk about it is mental health clinician, Dr. Chanda Reynolds. Dr. Chanda, so good to see you. Thanks for starting your day with us here on BNC. Love the hair, by the way. Little Diana Ross thing going on for you. Go, reach out and touch somebody's hand. Anyway, that's enough of that. We've been dealing with trauma for centuries, and some psychologists say that trauma can impact people for generations. Obviously, we've been going through it as Black people, a lot of us, since the days of slavery. So how can our ancestors' issues with mental health have an impact on us?
Mm-hmm. You know, Mike, that is such a great question. So I'm a believer that simply being Black in America is traumatic in itself. But I think Dr. Joy DeGroy did such an amazing job when she coined the term post-traumatic slave syndrome. And in her hypothesis, she essentially postulated that when a group of people goes through ancestral trauma, such as slavery, and that same group of people experiences racism and oppression and continued discrimination from years and years to come, then that group of people will experience emotional and psychological turmoil. And so we're experiencing that even today. And she even went further to say that a lot of Black people collectively are exhibiting symptoms of PTSD that go undiagnosed and untreated because of our ancestral history and that history of experiencing trauma day to day.
Yeah, it's one thing for professionals such as yourself to speak to it, but understanding it is key, it seems, and learning and listening to it. How does witnessing trauma today, not just in person, but like so many of us have on television or social media, affect our mental health?
Yeah, so when you think about trauma, it's important to think about it in the various domains in which it impacts us, right? So when we look at people who are gunned down by the police, our brothers and sisters such as Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, we have to keep in mind that when we are witnessing these events, especially people within our community, it is likely that we'll experience some sort of traumatic response because we call it vicarious trauma. So it's essentially being traumatized by watching somebody else's trauma. And so when we think about trauma in those domains, we have to think about how it impacts us on an emotional level. So we might feel angry, we might feel irritable, we may feel frustrated. It impacts us on a cognitive level or the way we think. So when individuals see people who look like them being gunned down, it makes us feel powerless. It makes us feel like we don't matter. It makes us feel hopeless in a sense. Therefore, in turn, it is important for us to constantly check in on ourselves from an emotional level as well as on a cognitive level. And even thinking physiologically, right? So trauma and witnessing these things on TV can impact us biologically. So think about the fight or flight response and how that can exacerbate all these different stress responses in the body. And it's not healthy for anybody to constantly be in that mode. And that's exactly what happens when we constantly see our brothers and sisters being gunned down.
Yeah, and it's so true because especially lately, you see everything, all the images on television, you just kind of get emotional, you get angry, you get sad, you feel helpless, but you still want to stay away.